Welcome to the Deer Society podcast. Here's your host, Brian Lemke.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2024. Thanks for joining us at the Deer Society podcast. I'm Brian Lemke, joined by Mike and JJ Dukart to kick off the new year here. Man, we're going to reflect on 2023, the goods, the bads, a lot of goods, a lot of lessons learned, and talk about, how we ended the year, how you guys ended the year, did a little Doe Management, had some successes there. So we're going to dive into that first. And then we're going to dive into just reflecting again on 2023 and some of the lessons learned. Each year is a learning experience. If you're not learning, you're not growing as a hunter. So obviously always out there, always experiencing new things, always learning. I'm going to talk a lot about that. And it's kind of a cool time of year, little downtime. We have a lot going on, ATA show coming up, just from the business side of things. But bucks are starting to shed a little bit. There's a few shed bucks on camera. So going to be starting to get ready for that next transitional phase in the season. But to kick things off, JJ, I'll kick it to you first. You guys did a little Doe Management at the Whitetails from Scratch property. Tell me about that.
Well, first, anybody watching, you see we're matching over here on the left and center with Seal vests. So, give a little shout out to Joe Miles. These Core Warmth vests are phenomenal. It's actually the same vest that we wear out in the field in the camouflage version, but he sent us a couple for wearing the ATA. Brian?
New year, memo. I thought would all be on the same page this year, and I'd start to get the memos, but they do look phenomenal and super warm and just so nice and cozy. They look really great.
Santa was nice to it. So diving into kind of late season doe hunting. It was actually, we did that here to wrap up December. Had a mild December, so that was actually a nice little addition to the doe hunt. Weren't bearing down on 2-3 feet of snow and 0-degree temps. Kind of felt like November doe hunt, so that was nice. We wanted to take out 2, 3, maybe 4, just kind of see how things worked out. We've been keeping an eye on the doe population. It's been getting pretty high. Haven't taken out a lot of does. We talked to the neighbors. The one to the west shot 2-3 does. One to the east shot a couple does. And then we just kind of looked at the population buck to doe ratio. Thought maybe we could put a dent in some of the does. So we went out there, took actually 2 out this year.
Yeah, I think it was a total of 7 with us and the adjoining neighbors. So,
which is good. It's not.
Yeah, and I thought about taking
maybe a little bit light.
Yeah, I thought about taking another one, but it's like, if you take too many, you don't really know, how it's going to. So we thought, this is the first time we've ever taken does off the property. So let's, and then the neighbors jumped on board with it, and it's like, let's just see what 7 does,
Yeah, we kind of thought maybe don't overdo it this year. We'll take a couple, look at it, and then if next year we want to take more, we can do that. So kind of a little more conservative approach instead of going over the top. Last year we had a hard winter and probably took out a few for us anyway. So, that was fun. Got some good footage.
Well, plus, selective does too. So if you're taking out an adult doe, there's a good chance you're taking out a doe that's going to have twins. You know what I mean? So that was kind of the target too. We were looking at least a 3-year-old type of a doe. You know what I mean? And I think I'm not sure, I'm not a biologist, but I'm not sure, but I know they start doing twins pretty consistently at a certain age. So we didn't get our target does though.
Yeah, old Blue Eye was out there the other day. I actually saw the one with half an ear when I was hunting, and then there's the piebald doe. So the 3 unique does are still out there. But yeah, we shot some nice big ones and filled up the freezers. Like I said, we got some pretty cool footage. We were talking about aiming point. I think it was 1 or 2 podcasts ago about deer and how they duck and aiming point. And I shot that first doe. I think I shot mine before you.
You shot yours
day.
The first day. Mine stayed on the far side of the food plot. But I just want to add one more thing. Another motivation for us taking does off was this year. Our local food bank is at a historic low of food. So I called them up and I asked them, I said, hey, if we, take a few deer, 2-3 deer or whatever, and get them processed and give it to you guys. Is it something that you would want? And they were just elated, And I says, well, what do you want? Because, I'm looking to make sausage for them and all kinds of good stuff. And he goes, well, really what we want is ground, So I'll add have them throw a little beef fat in there and give them ground meat. And so not only do you feel good about going out and doing something positive for the, the ecosystem out there, but it also makes you feel good to go out and shoot deer, and you can really start focusing on things like JJ, and I'll let him expand on that, is, where you want to shoot a deer, how they're ducking and all that kind of stuff. So that's good practice. But to know that you're doing good for your community, that's really what's kind of got me excited about it even more.
Yeah, so we'll get that meat out to, we'll get it all processed and then to the bank. That'll be cool. Yeah, aiming point on the doe. So had one come in, had a bunch of good footage. I was filming with slow-mo stuff with longer lens, some cool buck stuff, standing beans. I was hunting ground blind, eye level. That's kind of our favorite footage. Actually had some backlit from the sun coming in, so just some cool stuff out there that night. I played the exact wrong wind that I could possibly play because we had some new phase samples coming in from the lab.
Yep.
And 2 days in a row, I hunted with the wind blowing right at the deer, and I had 15 deer come in, didn't even smell me. So that was pretty crazy. That was a good testing, I guess. But yeah, had a bunch of deer come in, had that doe come in, and I was doing the dance in the blind. First, I was left of the camera, self filming. And then she came in from the left. So then I went to the right of the camera. And then I was trying to film with my left hand. Then she walked to the right. Then I went to the left of the camera, and she's only 20 yards away. So actually kind of an intense moment. You think of doe hunting is kind of a calm thing, but some of that, once it's the moment of truth, it gets pretty intense. I think that's good training too, to maybe next year we'll shoot some does early in the season, kind of get that feeling before we go for some bucks. But finally got position, had her walking through at about 20, a little bit less, and then she started walking away, quartering pretty hard. Got out to about 28. My HHA pin was set at 20. So she was at upper 20s, and I remember Brian talking about how he aims low on these deer and how much they're going to duck. And I thought, well, I hope Brian's right. So I aimed with the 20-yard pin about at the heart, quartering hard away, 28 yards, and so 20 would have, in theory, dipped below her chest a little bit, dropped a couple inches there, but she ducked right into it, and I think it was perfect heart shot, and she went 50 yards and piled up. So played the duck. Yeah. Played the Lemke duck, and it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. It's not just the duck either. It's the turn, 'cause if you got a quartering away shot, and I had a quartering away shot with mine, I got a crossbow, and this deer's only, I'm trying to think how far it was. It was just maybe 30.
Yeah, I think you said 30.
Yeah. And anyway, so it's standing there. And I can't, like JJ said, you're out there shooting does and it's intense. I had Connor in the blind with me, so he's getting all this footage, because Mike usually don't go out with a camera very often. And
the beard.
Yeah, had the beard, cooking the beard there. Yeah. Media. I was being mistaken for, who was that?
One mistake for Donnie Vincent.
Yeah, one mistake for Donnie Vincent. So
questionable judgment.
Yeah, it's kind of a scruff look, I guess, is the point I was trying to get at. I don't know if you want to call it a Skid Row Santa or what, not calling Donnie Vincent a Skid Row Santa. But anyway, so we had the look going, and we're in there in the blind. We got Connor. We're kind of having a good time whispering and stuff. So before the deer stayed on the far side of the food plot. So they're at 68 to 74. Now, a crossbow can easily kill a deer that far, but it's not my thing. I'm not competent there. A lot of people think that, when it comes to the crossbow, it's such a massive advantage. Well, it's really not. It's different. There is an advantage. I'm not saying there's not, because you can shoot further for sure. But if you're in the timber, you're not going to have an open 60-yard shot in the timber. That's not going to happen. Okay. Now, the disadvantages of a crossbow, this is my experience. When you pull that thing up, first of all, you got a bigger, heavier piece of equipment. But when you pull it up and you got deer around you, you could have does over here, or another small buck there, or whatever. Dude, you're moving a lot of mass. That's not something that's just hanging on a hook where you can just kind of easily slide your hand, lift it up, and no, you got this big, huge thing. You got to get it up your shoulder. You got to put your head down on it. And once you get down on it, it's in your sight or your scope. Most of them are using scopes. Now you're blind. You have no idea what's happening around you. None. And it's a completely different perspective. And when that thing goes off, or something sees you, or, you don't know when to move or when not to move. Anyway, I'm just trying to explain to people that a crossbow is a much more efficient weapon, but it's not necessarily that much more advantageous. I mean, that's what I picked up out of it. So anyway, back to the shot. So these deer are out, spent the whole evening there, decided I didn't want to take that shot. Because when I was sighting it in, I was extremely consistent at up to 60 yards. I could be like 2 to 3 inches off my target. And I was like, okay, 2 to 3 inches at 60 yards, I'm good with that. And that's using a steady type of support. Primos makes adjustable sticks. And then, Brian, you bought...
Yeah, the Bog Pod or Caldwell kind of shooting system.
Yeah, shooting like a tripod.
Yeah.
That's money there. Yeah. If you're in a blind, get that for sure.
Yeah.
Because the steadiness of it is just ridiculous, and then you get the confidence, Yeah. And I don't want to stereotype crossbow shooters, but I'm going to say that there's a larger amount of crossbow shooters, people that want to get into archery hunting are starting out with a crossbow. I'd say there's a good percentage of that. And so that's why I say, hey, that steadiness, because if you move just a little bit at 60 yards, dude, you could pull that thing off, looking through that scope, you pull that thing off 6-8 inches quickly. And they are so loud. Now we're going back to the deer duck thing. They are so loud. I mean, it clears the entire field. So it's not as loud as a gun, obviously, but it's loud. And so it clears the whole field. Where like with a bow, if you get a good, nice setup on a bow, you can get it off, a deer like, well, what was that? But you don't clear the field necessarily unless one, you hit it good and they go on up. Anyway, ranting a little bit here. So I'm going off and I'm working on my crossbow. I'm getting it dialed in. And then I realized that as soon as I got out to like 50 and 60 yards, it was just a little bit off. And I couldn't figure out why. It was shooting high. And I didn't realize that. So then I came in and I asked you. And you go, oh, it's probably what's that ring that, the poundage ring.
Yeah, feet per second. Yeah, like the feet per second ring or the poundage ring. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because it was working fine the year before. So anyway, I go back and I look at that ring and sure as heck, it was off on the poundage. So then I looked up the poundage on the crossbow. I set it for that poundage and went out there and just drove tacks. It was 50 yards. It was like, 10 ring. And so I'm going out doe hunting.
The speed.
What's that?
I looked up the speed.
I looked up the speed of the bow. Is that what I said?
Yeah. You said poundage, but yeah.
Yeah, the speed of the bow. I looked up the speed of the bow. You're right. Yeah, it's the speed of the bow, and you match it to that number. You dial it in, and then you sight your crossbow in based on that. And it just, it came into, you couldn't shoot at the same dot. You'd be breaking knocks at 40, 50 yards easy. So when you get that kind of confidence, now it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Well, I don't want to wound anything. That's the worst thing you can do. So I'm out there, and I wasn't going to take those long shots. So then the next day I go out. JJ had already got one, so we had fun there. Got that one harvested. So the next day I go out and we're out again. And Chris, we kept saying, Chris, you got to get into hidden plot where you shot your deer. You got to get in there. Every day you would have shot a deer every day if you'd have been in there. And so he goes in there and it's a windy north wind. It's kind of a little heavier that day and cold. And he just got stuck in a gar hole. Nothing came. So he wasn't happy, but anyway, I had the deer come in, and the excitement was that something more exciting happened than actually shooting the doe, and that's that we got a buck that I've been watching and studying in this plot for 4 years now, or 3 years. I've been kind of watching him. He's 4 years this year, so I noticed him as a 2-year-old, and we have footage of him coming in at this blind all the time. And so JJ's like, you got to get him. We need a new model for the food plots, So Connor's coming out and, he's got the good cameras and everything else. And sure as heck, he showed up and he modeled for like 10 minutes for us. Not that impressive looking late in the year because he had lost a lot of mass in his body. He looked puny to me. I'm like, dude, that looks skinny. I wasn't even sure if it was him at first, but you can't mistake because he's got 2 patches, Yeah. And that's why we call him Patches. But anyway, so Patches is out there modeling. I got a bunch of does out there, 4 or 5 or 6, and then they kind of drifted off. He kind of pushed them off the back end. I'm like, here we go. I'm not going to get a shot again, but who knows? They might circle back in, and sure as heck they did. And then I'm picking out which is the oldest one. And then all of a sudden I seen one pinning her ears back and pawing and bopping at some of those button bucks that were out there. And I'm like, okay, that's the one I'm going to shoot. She came in. It was a 30-yard shot. She's quartering away, and I didn't remember until actually I saw the deer, but she was quartering away left. And I put it in her, and I remember, all right, quartering away, if she turns, because it's loud. So if she turns quick, I got to make sure I got the right angle to get through that lung and carry that far shoulder. So if you got a quartering away and you're shooting and putting the pin on the lung heart shot at that way, and that deer turns instead of ducks, you'll catch it inside the shoulder, or you'll catch it high shoulder and you'll miss all the vitals. So these are the things that you get to learn and get to think about and, with the does. But you get super excited, Once you're going to shoot a deer, it doesn't make any difference, because you still have all the dynamics of, that deer's watching, that's happening, and, the buck just came out. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we talked about that, as we approached the end of the season there a couple podcasts ago. It was like, okay, what do you do? Maybe you don't have a target buck to go after, or, you're just not seeing the target buck that you are after. Go get excited about shooting some does. It does get exciting. When you decide that that's going to be the target,
yeah.
As a hunter, you get excited.
You do.
You're hearing those stories about you guys just getting fired up shooting does. Like, that's cool. I think a lot of us miss that. A lot of the time we get so hyper-focused on, got to shoot a buck, got to shoot a big buck, got to shoot this kind of buck with this kind of weapon in this scenario. And it's like, sometimes you miss just the basic excitement of, just going out and shooting easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but, just going out and shooting a doe. There's a lot to be said about that. But so took some does. I think this is kind of a good transition into kind of some reflection and lessons learned from this past season. And one of the lessons learned, I think, continuously, and I think this is another area that you can never stop learning, is just shot placement. Shot placement and deer recovery after the shot. We talked about it, I think, I don't know if it was last podcast or the podcast before that, but, obviously JJ said it, I'm a big advocate for aiming low. Just have seen and filmed too many deer drop into arrows or drop to a point where the arrow hits them high in no man's land. Advocate of hitting them low, but those deer, they can move so quickly that even if they don't drop or they turn, like the organs, the way that they move inside, when a deer moves even just a little bit, can make the difference in short recovery, a quick recovery, or potentially no recovery at all. That's why video is so important, running a tact cam or secondary angle or any kind of angle, to have that video footage. Because the reality is, and I've said it time and time again, 90% of the time, whether, and I've worked with outfitters, I've worked with, just seen lots of people shoot deer and hear stories and filmed a lot of them. And 90% of the time, the hunter's reaction is, smoked him, dead deer. And that arrow could be anywhere in them. But that's like, you get in that tunnel vision, your adrenaline's so high, you're in that kill mode, and your mind tells you one thing. And even if it looks good, sometimes those animals move and do weird things. That's why it's so crucial. And I've said this before, like the hunt doesn't end after you put an arrow or shoot the deer. Like that hunt still continues, and it can be quite the chase afterwards, depending on the shot. Now, again, I'm a big believer in being conservative. We have the ability most of the time to analyze the video and that kind of thing. But really understanding, the anatomy of a deer and what's lethal and how long it might take a deer to die if he's shot in the liver or in one lung or in the guts so just understanding all of that. We should do a whole podcast on just
we should, and there's a lot more to it because you talked about all that stuff and everybody's listening to what you're saying. And one of the key things that I picked up out of it, and two things actually. One was that adrenaline. And if it's a big target buck that you've been waiting years for, excuse me, there's more adrenaline
big time
than shooting a 2 or 3 year old doe. I mean, and even a buck that you thought, oh, I think, is that a shooter? So you're analyzing, that's different. When you see your target deer that you've been waiting for years and years, or a big buck that really excites you, and that could be a 3-year-old deer. It doesn't have to be a 7 and an 8.5-year-old deer. But when you get that adrenaline, you don't remember. I didn't remember which way that doe was facing. I told JJ, I says, I remember I saw it through the scope, I saw the bolt, and I saw it hit perfect. So I knew I crushed it. But the first thing I did is I asked Connor, because he had the camera, I said, I think I hit him pretty good. What do you think? And he looked back at it, he goes, oh, you creamed it, And so, but then when we were looking at the deer, he goes, well, JJ's like, where did it go in? I go, well, it should be right in behind the shoulder, should have caught the lung and went right into the heart. You know what I mean? Because she turned away from me. And we looked at it and we seen the wound was like way front by the shoulder. He goes, I thought you said she was facing to the right. And I go, I thought she was. And then we looked at it and said, no, she was facing left, because that's exactly where where it hit. So you don't realize it. And the other point is that you brought out is that we've always filmed. So we've always had the advantage of looking and reliving that moment because we had it documented.
If we get it on film.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you get something on film. You know what I mean? Even if it's not a great steady shot or whatever. But
yep.
The thing of it is man, I just, the anxiety I get even going to recover a deer, knowing where the arrow went in, I can't even imagine what it would be like because I haven't done it. It's been 15 years or over a decade where we've not filmed. I mean, we've been filming ever since we saw hunting deer. I don't know what that feeling would be like. Because now you'd be confused and, distressed and, the ups and downs and the lows. And that's why it's so important. Well, once you talk about Chris's recovery, because that was a big up and down, even though we had a good recovery on the deer and some of the tools. Maybe we can talk about some of that, the things that are available to us now that I'm glad the DNRs aren't stepping in front of that and allowing people to recover their deer with different techniques.
I'll just say it was a good year last year, 2023, and there was a broad spectrum of when deer were shot. We had some early season, late season, big bucks, no small bucks, but smaller bucks, medium bucks. We'll call them medium bucks. Great shots, questionable shots, low shots, high shots. We pretty much had it all.
Yeah, we did.
I wish we could. I was just thinking while you guys were talking, if we had everybody's rack sitting here and we could kind of look at them and try to remember what happened on this one, because each hunt is so much different from, I spined my buck late season, whole season worth of grinding just to get that shot. He ended up ducking, shot him in the spine. Obviously, quick recovery with that one. Chris's buck right away, early season, I think it was the first buck out of the group here. He shot his a little bit back. That's a 2-day adventure trying to find that one. Connor shot a buck, smashed that one. Adam shot his buck a little bit back, but found it right away. Your buck you shot was unknown because it was just off camera.
Yeah.
Ended up finding him, didn't go that far, but more of an interesting.
Yeah. Still the next day and
a hard track.
Yeah.
So just so many different ways deer are moving and where we're hitting them, and I don't know. It's just a crazy year. But in general, we had a phenomenal season. Didn't lose any bucks, right? I don't think we lost any deer.
No.
100% success recovery-wise.
Yeah.
I still got a couple guys going after it. A little bit of January hunting. Connor shot a doe. I think he's going to maybe go after a buck. Andrew could still shoot a buck, I think.
Yep.
Through
7th, maybe?
7th.
A couple more days.
So still getting after it. But yeah, we had just a wide spectrum of the season, thinking about, all the deer early, stacking them up, and then some peak season, your buck was late October, kind of pre-rut, all the way to just dragging, grinding it out late season. So I don't know how you want to break that all down, but there's a lot of different scenarios there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a killer year, pun or no pun intended. For all of our team, and throughout the whole season, it was really good. One of probably the best ever. Hunt breakdowns are going to be wicked this next year, but so we'll get into some of those things, but just without diving into too much detail, like I said, maybe we could do a podcast or something and just talk about this. But I'm a firm believer of we do so much to prepare for the hunt and for that moment of truth, like we all talk about, and the kill and the shot. One of the most important things I think that you can do that's way overlooked is prepare for after that, because I don't care how good of an archer you are, how good of a rifle shot you are, how many bullseyes you can shoot at 50 yards on the range. As a hunter, if you do it long enough, like chances are, I'm not saying that every single person has done it, but chances are that you're going to make an imperfect shot at some point. And when those moments happen, I think if you have taken the time, or you take the time at that point to step back and understand more about that shot before you just charge in there and try to find the deer, I think if you do a good job of educating yourself on the anatomy, where you might have hit them, what that means. So, okay, maybe what does this blood look like? What is the timing of recovery on this? How to approach it. Again, how long to wait. You have way more of a chance of recovering your deer after the fact. I think I could not even come close to putting a number on it, because who knows, but there'd be way more deer recovered every year in a more ethical manner if people took the time to understand that and took more time on the back end of the shot, than they typically do. And that's a general statement. I'm not saying everybody does that, but I will say that there is a strategy involved to recovering deer. Obviously, Mike, you mentioned it. We have tools, now that can help us do that. And I don't want to get into that topic at all, but there's things out there like, dogs. There is a huge thing now. There's a super hot topic with thermal drones these days that, some states it's good, some states it's not good. And that's a lot going on with that now. But anyways, there's tools out there to help you recover those deer. But before even those tools come into play, as a hunter, from an ethical standpoint, educate yourself on the deer or whatever the animal's anatomy is, and hopefully that makes you more successful moving forward.
Yeah, and that, we use that Deer Track on the DeerCast app a lot.
Huge tool.
For many years we've been using that. That's an awesome tool, and that's like the first step. Like, what do you think happened? Look at the footage. Then that gives you that view of the vitals and the bone structure, and
yep.
Then they give all the video examples, and the juries do a good job breaking all that down. And it's worked. It's pretty much been spot on every time.
That's a fantastic tool.
The next step, now you're looking at blood.
It takes all that anxiety away, because now you have actual scientific data.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm going to say scientific because it's factual data. But that's a big deal. And then the other thing is on the Onyx app, you track your footsteps. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. That's a big deal. Now, when it comes to tracking deer, I mean, why don't you give your spin on tracking deer, and then I'll kind of weigh in on mine.
My spin on tracking deer. Well, I'm always cautious. I'm not very good at finding blood, and I always have that thing happen to me where I can't remember details either because of the.
You're a little bit of colorblind too, by the way. I want to bring that up to him because we realized that when he was young.
And I don't know where to go with
it's right, man. Well, just go with that. We'll just talk about what your thought process is.
Well, I'm just cautious, so back out. Chris shot his deer. He's calling us right away. We just back out. Let's just analyze everything, watch the footage. Do all of our diligence with the app and the blood, and figuring out all the stuff, and then game plan first. The excited hunter in me, whenever I shoot you, I just want to go right to where I last saw the deer. Just don't try to find him. And that's probably my biggest fault when tracking deer, because I hate how you're so ready to find your deer and so anxious, and you got to try to find your arrow in the blood. That's like the worst feeling in the world to me.
It's everybody.
I just want to go walk to where I think he fell, and typically that's not where they fall. I don't know where I want to go with that. There's just so many different examples. I don't know if you want to break down different stuff or just kind of go back to just year in summary maybe. And
let's go through the process just real quick here though. So just so people get an idea where our brain or my brain is anyway. But from JJ's perspective, I'm the same way. So it must be genetic. I don't know what it is about once you shoot a deer, why can't you remember when all that adrenaline is, going through your brain must have something to do with it. And there's ways where you can try and train yourself to be calm and this and that, but I'm sorry, I do this for the adrenaline. And so it's kind of like my drug. So once that starts kicking in, when you see the deer and you're going to shoot it, you can't control it. It's just stupid. I mean, I was in the blind with Connor and those does were coming and, it's not that big a deal. It's just that I knew, I'm going to kill this one doe right here. And there was time, and I was looking at it, and the adrenaline started pumping, and then they drifted off. It's like I was revved up still, and I was still not shaky, but I was, you know what I mean? I was like tight tense. It was a little cool, too. I'm like, what the heck? It's a stupid doe. Why is that happening to me? So back back when you were young, and you shot that one buck up on the Hart's Ridge, okay? There's a nice 10-pointer. And he comes out, I got his, what?
He had some kickers.
Yeah. So anyway, so now he shoots this deer and he's all excited and I come up and I know, what were you, 15, 14?
20.
13?
20 or something.
You weren't that old, were you?
I was.
Oh, were you?
Right, like 13. Baby.
See, that's dads go way back and think of their kids really young. But anyway, so he shoots this deer. We go up there and we're looking at it and he goes, and I'm like, we couldn't find blood anywhere. I'm like, well, now what did you say he did? Because, I'm trying to break the story down. And then he kind of walked me through it and everything. I'm going, well, if you shot it here, but it ran down there, it must have done, and I don't remember the exact thing, but what happened was I realized that the deer did something before it took off. In other words, it like jumped back. It took like 4 or 5 steps and then I could see it in the leaves. I'm like, well, based on what I'm seeing here, this deer like did this, took off and went that way. And that's when we found the first speck of blood. And when I say speck, I mean not a lot of blood in this deer. And this is where I realized that he was a little colorblind because I'm tracking this deer and there's very, very little blood. And I'm looking for a couple things. I'm looking for the foot. You know what I mean? There's there's deer tracks and then there's freaked out deer tracks. And some are fresh and some are old. So those are some things that I look at. So I'm trying to break that down. What's that deer doing? And then I also look at those footprints. If you start to see them kind of like zigzag, like, they're not a straight, complete, type of a trot run or whatever. If they're kind of going left and going right, I'm like, oh, that deer's hurt bad because now it's doing that wobble thing. You know what I mean? Or it's on the death run. It's just digging and going and busting branches and, so those are the things I look for too. And I'm also, obviously, blood is the most important thing. So we're finding this blood. It's just very little blood. Then we get down in the pine tree bed and now we lose it. Because now if you got pine tree needles, so if you're hunting in pine trees and your pine tree needles, that's tough, man. Because the blood on a timber leaf, like an oak leaf or something, it shines. You know what I mean? You got a nice shiny, you can see it. It's like, oh, there's something shiny over there. Look, yep, blood. So it's easier to track, in my opinion, that way. In pine, especially if you don't have a lot of blood, you got that skinny little needle. And so I'm finding these little pinprick blood things on these pine needles. And it's probably one of my better tracking jobs. And so I get all the way down and we were on the top of a bluff and we went down the bluff and we got to the base and then we came to a gravel road. So we get down to this gravel road and I get this blood all the way almost to the gravel road, right to by the ditch. And I'm like, oh, he must have crossed roads. So we look over there, couldn't find any blood crossing the road, couldn't find any blood on the other side of the road. And this went on for 10 minutes. So I went back and I just stopped. So that's what I'll do. When I get confused or frustrated, I'll just go back to where I was and I'll just stop. And then I'll start thinking about what would a deer do based off of what I've seen over the years. What would a deer, what could happen? Okay. And one experience I had is I had a deer cross a creek after I shot it in the snow, and there was blood everywhere. And also the blood disappeared. It's like, how can the blood disappear? The deer trail's right there where he was running on, and there's no blood on the other side. It doesn't make any sense. I was getting all worked up. I was young at the time. Actually, it was the first deer I ever shot. And then I just stopped, and I'm like, well, if he didn't get across and he's not on the other side, the light come on. He's laying in the creek. And I looked down the creek, and there was a deadfall laying in this creek, and there that deer, as soon as that deer saw me look at him, he jumped up and tried to get away and get up the thing. So that came back to me on this one. It's like, okay, we got to the gravel road. It's not there. It's not there. He's got to be laying right here somewhere. Look down, there he was laying right in the ditch, down in the deep part of the ditch, just laying there dead because he didn't want to cross that road. I suppose a car could have came or whatever, but that's where he died. So anyway, that's just one take. And like you said, we could do a lot on this when it comes to tracking deer.
Yeah.
For
sure. It's a game.
Slower is better, and I hate slower when tracking deer.
But there's so many ups and downs. And if you get frustrated and you don't find those signs, if you don't back off and just, try and relax and just refocus, use that app. That helps so much.
Yeah, app is huge.
People give up, I think, too easily sometimes because of the frustration part of it. You just want to quit. Yeah. Don't quit.
Yeah. How many bucks did we get down this year?
Well,
like 7.
I shot 2. You shot 1. Adam shot 1. Connor shot 1. Jonah shot 1. Chris shot 1. That's just our group in the office here. Andrew, Connor still hunting maybe.
Jonah's still hunting,
even though his deer shed. So that's kind of an interesting story. So he, on one of his properties, he had a big deer show back up finally, just like the week after Christmas. He hadn't seen him for a long time. He had him on early. That deer showed back up on his reveal the week after Christmas. And he's like, it was a big one, yeah. And he's like, man, I don't know. I think I might leave him. Yeah, I think he's gonna make it. Try to leave him till next year. And got a video of him the next night, and he's just limping bad. Looked not good. And this is a big deer right now, but could be like a mega next year. And he's like, I'm gonna go hunt him. So he goes and hunts him, and didn't see him that night.
It goes through 7th.
Yeah, yep. So it's still, and it goes through at least the 7th. And I think it actually goes through the 11th, 10th or 11th. Anyways, so comes back by the camera that night, dropped one side.
Oh, because he's hurt.
He's hurt. Next morning, comes back by, dropped both sides.
And he's going to be down next year, too, because he's injured.
Yeah, we'll see if he makes it or what happens there. Kind of a bummer. Hopefully, maybe we'll do a podcast if he finds his sheds and brings him in. That'd be kind of cool. But
there you go.
Yeah, he said he glassed. He didn't want to. He's not barging in there right now because there's a bunch of deer in there. He said he glassed from the road, just out in the field and didn't see anything. But yeah, so if you guys still hunting, maybe get to number 8 or 9. That'd be awesome. But pretty good year all around. And then, I mean, the Deer Society teams did pretty darn good too. I know there's a bunch of deer from Whitetail Edge guys. They had a banger year as always. Ben is no stranger to putting a bunch of bucks on the ground on his team. And
the Iowa boys did well, I think.
Yeah, the AWS guys, they shot some pretty good deer, it looked like too, huh?
Joe.
Joe's a machine anyway. He's out there killing deer. That's kind of what his new occupation is, I think.
Yeah, we might have some new team members coming on this year too. Shot some nice deer. We got people submitting footage.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Using the products, filming from different. It's kind of doing it on their own or with other teams and sending us stuff. So we might have some cool stuff coming in. Some new team members. So if anybody's out there listening, you're filming, let us know.
Kind of a EBM year for me. Everybody but Mike.
But you had the mindset earlier, like, well, there's nothing that shows up. I'm just not hunting, waiting for does.
And that's exactly right. I mean,
called your shot.
I did hunt, though. I mean, I hunted.
You predicted your season perfectly.
I did. I hunted quite a bit this year, though. I mean, I just wanted to get footage in the food plot and stuff like that. And I saw plenty of bucks. I just, nothing I was going to shoot. And then there was one shooter that came in, some scraps from your area there, kind of did a transition. And so we kind of tried to pick that up, but that never happened. But we saw some decent bucks there too.
Summary of the season.
Yeah.
Couldn't even pick up the scraps.
Couldn't even pick up the scrappers. JJ got a scrapper. JJ picked up the scrapper late season.
Picked up the scrap.
He was all bummed out. He's like, "Oh, the deer gone. We never got." And I'm like, JJ, just settle down. You're not going to shoot an 8.5-year-old buck every year. Just chill.
I will say that scrap buck that wandered over there, I did hear just yesterday actually that I think that he made it through.
Ooh, a little scrapper.
So we'll see if I can't hold that scrap a little tighter next year. Just wander over there.
We're strategizing against each other now.
It's kind of cool looking.
High fence going up on that side, the north side over there.
It is kind of cool, like the countdown to the obviously it's the new year and there's a lot of things in life you're getting excited about for a new year and but at the same time that first morning the reveals hit on New Year's Day and some of the 4-year-old bucks.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of a good feeling.
Oh baby, no, I hope they make it.
So it's like a new season, even though some of us are still hunting and thinking about shed hunting and other stuff. I'm already thinking, oof, couple 4-year-olds sneaking through.
Yeah. What all right, so moving on past that, what other lessons did you learn this year? Like, what are your big takeaways from just the whole season?
I don't mind. Do you want to go?
I'll go. On mine is I might steal it from you though if I go too quick, but mine is what can we do better for the property to we just take it so conservative, and so we've been on this property for what? We've had it for, this is our 6th year, coming on our 6th year?
I'll call it 5.
5, let's call it 5 years. And we still don't have it set up even near to where we would like it. And we're afraid to do too much aggressive. So like, I want to get a bunch of core trails built in there. You know what I mean? And JJ's more conservative on that because he just doesn't necessarily want to get into the interior of the property. But I think we have to. We're at that point now because we really don't understand, what's going on with these bucks. What's their behavior on the inside? It's 200 acres, and we don't even know what those deer do in the interior of the property because we don't go in there. And I think we need to get some kind of system in there just so we can learn more. So when it comes to that was your question. What did you learn?
Yeah. What are the takeaways?
Yeah. And now I'm hearing stuff about switchgrass. Some people think it's the awesome thing. Some people think it's not necessarily. I know we got switchgrass. We've got that going. So should we go with more, conifer trees, right? Like pines and stuff like that. Should we go with more of that? Because I've had a lot of great experiences with that being in timber. It's been some of the hottest spots. Even though it's kind of clear and easy to get through, they love going in there. And I think, that's a good warm thing for them because we lost 2 or 3 shooters. One we didn't recover, but he didn't show up this year and would have been 9.5. So we're assuming he's dead too because the other 2 shooters, and if you watch, the Peyton video, what did we call that one?
The story of Peyton.
Yeah, the story of Peyton. Watch that video, and that'll kind of tell the story of what happened. We lost. There was a lot of deer we lost last year, so we were kind of bummed out. But now there's a missing deer that we had high hopes for. Will he show back up? I don't know. Why aren't they staying on our property? Those are things we're trying to really learn. I might have stole that from JJ, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, so you're just looking at improving that whole hunting situation for the property we're on there. I look at that everywhere I go, though. So if I'm in Wisconsin, I'm always thinking, because everything, it seems like there's always something that changes no matter what the property is. I know, Brian, where you're hunting, what was CRP is now corn, and what was this is now that. And where I was hunting in Wisconsin, what was some of the best bedding got trimmed up into not so good a bedding. The field changed from corn to beans, and it's just like there's always a change. And it's trying to figure out, was that a good change? Was that a bad change? We made a lot of changes. Was that a good thing? Was that a bad thing?
Right.
And then trying to figure out what's better. So I know you're looking at that hard for our property. I look at that too for some of the other properties. This property here has some great shooter bucks, no food, can't hunt it. Like, let's get some food there. So there's always that in the mind every year. It seems like we're trying to figure out how can we make this better? What can we do different? My big takeaway was I knew going into the season I didn't have like some big target buck that I was going to be in the A spot for, like high odds of shooting big shooter buck, right? So I knew there was like a bunch of deer kind of on the edge. Wasn't sure if they're going to be shooters or not. I just knew it was going to be a long grind of season potentially. So that's kind of what happened. And I just kind of just kept grinding. Thinking back to other seasons, some seasons go quick. Andre shot him right away, right? First set. Other seasons, Curly, that's December 20th.
Yeah.
That was a grind. You know, I shot 2 great bucks that year. I shot a big 10 in Wisconsin, Curly. Shot the 10 on November 16th and then Curly on the 20th of December. So those were like post-rut, late season stuff. And throughout the whole first half of that year, I'm thinking, man, this season sucks. Like, what's going on? Ended up being my best season ever. So you never know when something's going to change and turn. And that was my mindset the whole time. And finally, my season here was kind of the same. But then late in the year, this buck showed up in Wisconsin. Actually, the buck I'd been hoping would show up all season showed up, injured, didn't have as big a rack as I thought he would. Kind of body was wore down, but regardless, it's the buck I've been waiting for all season. Finally showed up, so then put that commitment in and hunted him hard and finally grinded out, tagging out on a buck. So I think just never giving up. I think looking back at previous seasons you always think like, oh, I'm gonna shoot my buck on this first cold front in late October, just like Lemke does here. That's like the perfect thing that could possibly happen, right?
Yeah.
And then that window goes by, and then what?
Then what?
Just keep looking. I can just keep kind of pulling back from the bank, like, okay, I shot a buck on November 10th that one year. What did I do for that? Okay, let's try that. No, that window went by, and then, I shot a buck November 16th post-rut. This is how that looked. So let's try that. Let's go for that strategy and just keep looking back with some positive thoughts on.
But then the gun
there's still
season,
a chance that I can shoot one here.
but then the gun season kicks in, and then everything just totally that you've worked for behavior and all that and patterning it just is gone. It's out the window. The buck could have been killed, or he just completely just went nocturnal. But there's just so many variations that happen at that point.
Yeah.
And then last year, Peyton showed up late in December. I was filming him in this bean field. Well, maybe another buck, a new buck's going to show up. So I just keep looking back, like what is something that I can pull from that's going to keep me motivated and know that it can still happen.
So you need to
happen.
You have to stay positive. It's hard to when you run into
It wasn't
those.
always positive, but it was always hopeful.
Hopeful, and you're that there's some potential. But you know what? As you do this more, I'm just gonna give advice. Don't put yourself in a position where you get so down that the frustration sets in that you're not enjoying yourself, because we can do that real quickly to ourselves. You do it in golf, you can do it in anything. You know what I mean? And so don't try not to get yourself there, even though it kind of happens by default sometimes. Just try and snap out of it and go out and try and find something to enjoy about it. Try and find get a different goal. Like, all right, I want to, get some video, try videoing for the first time, because there's a lot of, satisfaction and joy that comes out of filming a nice buck or getting a really good shot, and you can go look back on that, or shooting a doe on film, or shooting any deer on film. You know what I mean? That's a whole nother sport in itself. You know what I mean? So just try not to get into that down part. And as you do it more and more, that becomes less and less, I think. I've been doing it for so many years. My thing is, how come Mike's not shooting big bucks like everybody else? Well, I'm not out there. That's not my priority. That sounds stupid, but it is not my priority. And that's the God's truth. That's not my priority. It doesn't mean I don't want to. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go try to, but it's more important to me to see JJ or Chris shoot their biggest buck than it is for me to go shoot my biggest buck. That's just the way it is. I would prefer to, especially in this time of my life, watch my grandkids come up, watch my son succeed at a high level. I've done a lot of things that are very successful in my life. You know what I mean? So that's just not my priority. So it's less pressure on me. Now, if I see an advantage, and I turned down those, it drives JJ nuts. Dad, you need to get out there because Curly was supposed to be my buck, right? And we kind of do that with each other. That buck that Chris was after, oh, that's Chris's buck. We kind of, that doesn't mean we wouldn't shoot it if it came by our stand, but we're going to give Chris the advantage on trying to get that buck.
The A spot.
So JJ always says the A spot.
The A spot. You know what I mean? So, but I just didn't go out. And he goes, Dad, you got to go out. It's a cold front. It's going to get warm. You got to go out. It's right at that pinch point. And I almost did. I'm like, nah, go ahead. And he goes out there and he kills it off the ground. It just blew my mind. I didn't think it was going to happen. But he does that. He does that over and over. That's not the first time. But anyway, so I guess that's my point. Don't get down. Enjoy the sport. I get as much excitement out of seeing a mink walking through the creek, or getting locked down by a 3 or 4 does at 7 yards, and we got one tree stand that we over trimmed, and it's brutal. Yeah. They're like 5-6 yards away looking at you, and that's a lot of intensity too. So, but you can get something out of that, Patches showed up this year. We got good footage with him with a good camera. That's a highlight. I could have cared less if I'd have shot a deer that day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's cool. I mean, you filmed them early. What was that, kind of October, late October?
Yeah, I think that was late October. I was filming him. I got 2 days of footage of him, but he just kept going through so quick.
Yeah. And then he came late, so it's cool to see how different he looks, now and then,
Or now he looks like a 2-year-old. He looked like a 5-year-old. Really.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So, and that's another thing is...
That scares me, though. If we had a tough winter like we did last year, I don't think he'd live. We got to do something.
He looked like that last winter, too. He looked real bad. Not bad, but they just get worn down. One more thing before Brian recaps the dream season. One thing I'm kind of doing this year, and, it's hard to age. We always go by age on deer.
We do.
I feel like sometimes you miss the mark. You got these deer that have just giant bodies, the Andres, what we called beast this year. I think he died he was 3. Then you got the small body ones, the one I shot, 140 pounds. Patches, he probably looks 150 pounds. They're just tiny deer. Some have big bodies, some have small bodies. Starting to age them a little bit more, diving a little bit more into the tooth wear thing, sending some teeth off. Sent my buck's teeth off. Actually, I have Beamer's teeth here. So I'm sending those off next week too, to actually kind of double back on what we think is 8 and just see if we can start learning from that. I know Andre, we thought he was
4,
5 or something, being 7 based on the teeth, but the tooth wears doesn't match that. So that's kind of my new little interest.
Yeah, we need to dig into that.
Trying to figure out how old are these deer,
Yeah.
We think they're this, but what are they?
We're seeing them and they're not, though.
Not that that's a takeaway on the season, but just something new that kind of came about based on the season.
Yeah.
We should have a podcast about that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool to do, for sure. My big takeaways from this year are, man, sometimes you just get lucky and sometimes you don't. You have seasons, and I've had...
Don't even put luck.
I know, honest to God. You have so many seasons that are... And everybody keeps saying, the dream season, all this. Yeah, and it was, absolutely, and it absolutely was. But man, I've had so many that weren't, where you're searching and doing those things that you talked about, and okay, well, I shot this one buck on December 10th, but we have late season coming, and then it's 3 days left in the season. You're like, well, okay, what can I do the last day? But no, I don't know. This year a lot changed. I was hyper focused on kind of at least here in Minnesota, that one buck, and looking back on it now, it's there was a lot of other really good deer there. A couple of them I saw. But then I really, it wasn't like I ignored them, but I kind of did. It was just they were secondary to my mind because it was all about that big one. And and shot them, and then, monitored stuff, but didn't really pay attention. I mean, some of those bucks made it, but it'll be cool to kind of regroup now and for me, re-strategize, see what deer made it. The exciting part for me is, I guess this year, like, I had a goal, accomplished it, and I obsessed over it. Next year, there's kind of a piece that is not on this main section. It's a little bit off that is different. It's hard to hunt, not as much there. Some of the best pictures we get all year are there. Not always daylight, some at night, but some of the best deer are over there. And my focus this year is going to be spending some more time over there, trying to understand that more and trying to see how I can improve it to maybe shoot one of those bucks. And I think for me, looking back even on this year, like, what do I appreciate? What do I look back on? It's that chase. It's all that strategy that's involved, and that's what I look forward to this next year. There's not going to be a buck like I shot this year. I don't think next
Scraps.
year. Never know. There's that. Well, Scrappy could maybe get there, but it's that chase. It's that unknown, and it's trying to improve. Always. I don't think are you guys ever going to get to a point on the whitetails from scratch property that you're like, yep, it's done. It's the way we like it.
Oh no, no.
So
It's like the mail.
I'm not even happy with a lush food plot. I'm like, did you see that weed that came in over there? How do we not have weeds? It's just like,
He's so weird about that.
Oh, there's a tree 5 feet over there. I should probably get in that tree. Like, there's never a.
It's like
game.
you're not farming, trying to be on a TV show in a competition. It's like It's a food plot, and they eat weeds too, by the way.
Yeah, they don't really care that much if it looks that much better. I think it's a people thing.
But those food plots do look fabulous. I'll give them that.
They do.
Yeah, they look good.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say one thing on your season too. Like, obviously the year is done, but it's just cherish it while you can. Because I'm not saying it won't happen again. Because maybe it'll happen even better next year. You never know. But odds are, a couple 180s. I don't know how many times it'll happen.
Probably not. Like I said, I
cherish it.
I've waited 34 years to try to shoot a buck that was that caliber, and then shoot 2 in 1 year. That's pretty special. But takeaway on strategy this year, again, it wasn't anything crazy that I did that was different necessarily. I think you're always learning, so you're always learning new things and improving every single year. But I think there's a few main things. One, it's just picking the right times to hunt the deer, not hunting them until they're killable. 2 is if you're fortunate enough to have historical data or historical encounters or whatever it is, knowing that deer from the past, especially mature bucks, paying attention to what they've done in the past, applying that to the year that you're hunting them. I think that is a game-changing method that if you have that data, use it. And then obviously just being strategic and using the tools and intel that you have, running those reveals, I mean, is huge. Getting you that real-time intel without being in there and having to disturb everything. Yeah. Those 3 things, I think are really big takeaways in strategy hunt-wise that, made the dream season, I guess.
It's basically, it's a concept, if you look at it like this, that you give them what they want and need, and you allow them to use it the way they want to and need to. And you're not an element of any kind of threat in that little scenario. You created a pattern.
Yeah.
You created a pattern, and as long as you don't blow that up, you're going to get your opportunity. And all those tools, your microplots, your trail cams, your changes into the properties or whatever it is you're doing, playing the right wind phase helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
It really does. If they don't know you're there, I know I pretty much could guarantee you that because of the phase alone, we're able to get in and out of stands without being detected more often today than we have ever before hunting. There's no question.
Yep.
I mean, JJ hunted them straight downwind.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Once they detect you, and you blow that up, you just really diminished your chances.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, lots of good stuff came from 2023. Obviously, roller coaster as every hunting season has. Getting into 2024 here, hopefully some more bucks, a couple more hit the ground before the end as seasons roll out here. But going to start looking forward to shed hunting and planning and strategizing for what will be spring soon enough. It's crazy to look out there right now. Minnesota, we're
Turkeys.
January 5th, and we have no snow.
Turkeys.
It's not super cold, and turkey season is coming. That's always fun. It's always fun to get out and shoot some turkeys and be out there in the spring, and it'll be here before you know it. But everybody, thanks for tuning in. If you still do have a tag, good luck out there hunting. Happy New Year. Good luck to everybody in all aspects of your life this year. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Download the free Deer Society app. Tons of good stuff on there. We are headed to ATA next week. We may try to do a podcast from there. We'll see how crazy the booth and everything is, but for sure, at the least, we'll give you an update on all things ATA and new things for 2024 when we get back. So again, thanks for tuning in, and Happy New Year.
All our sponsors here at Deer Society are partners whose equipment we know we can trust are going to make you more successful and have a better experience in the field. Products like Illusion Systems, maker of the Black Rack, the Extinguisher, and the Phase Body Odor System. Tacticam, Reveal Cell Cameras, 10-Point Crossbows, Onyx Maps, Osseo Gear, Hooyman, and Big Frig.